Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I grew up in western North Carolina, about 30 minutes outside Asheville. The mountains weren't just scenery to me. They were in my blood. I'd hiked those trails my whole life, knew the forests like the back of my hand, or at least I thought I did. Summer of 2014. My girlfriend and I were heading to Canada to visit her family. Simple road trip. But then my grandmother got sick, and we had to make a detour through West Virginia. That detour changed everything. The first part of the drive was incredible. My girlfriend had never seen the Appalachian landscape before. The rolling hills, the endless forests, the way the sky changes color when the sun dips behind the mountains. We stopped in Buffalo, grabbed supplies, caught sunset in Pittsburgh. Everything felt perfect, but once we crossed into West Virginia, something shifted. The roads became narrower, the forests thicker, the towns, they just stopped appearing. We'd drive for an hour without seeing a single house, a single light. Just trees pressing in on both sides of the highway. Around midnight, we pulled into this gas station. I mean, calling it a gas station is generous. It was more like a shack with a single pump out front. The kind of place that looks abandoned until you get close. My girlfriend made a joke about it looking like something out of a horror movie. We both laughed, but the sound came out wrong. Nervous. I was filling up the tank when I felt someone behind me. I turned around and there she was. This woman, maybe in her 50s, but something about her seemed much older. Her eyes were wide, too wide. She wasn't blinking, just staring at me with this intensity that made my stomach drop. Before I could say anything, the guy behind the counter moved. Fast, he grabbed this rifle from under the register, a Savage 110, and started scanning the windows, the parking lot, the tree line. His whole body was tense, like he was expecting something. He looked at me. "You need to leave. Right now." I didn't argue. But when I went to pay, he leaned in close. His voice was barely a whisper. "That woman, she's not alone. They live up in the mountains. People go missing around here. A lot. The cops don't do anything about it." My hands were shaking when I got back to the van. My girlfriend saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. I told her we were leaving. Now. We drove for maybe 20 minutes before I saw headlights behind us. At first, I thought it was just another car, but they stayed back, always the same distance, never getting closer, never falling behind. Then I saw more headlights, coming from a side road, and more from another direction. They were coordinating. I pulled off onto this narrow dirt road, killed the lights, and we just sat there in complete darkness. My girlfriend's hand was gripping mine so hard it hurt. We could hear an engine rumbling past on the main road. A big vehicle, a truck maybe. It slowed down right where we'd turned off, then kept going. We waited an hour before moving again, maybe longer. Time felt strange. When we finally got back on the road, I kept checking the mirrors every few seconds. My heart didn't stop pounding until we crossed the state line. I tried reporting it to the police later. They took a statement, asked some questions, but nothing ever came of it. The case was closed within a month. But I still think about that woman's eyes. The way the gas station attendant moved for that rifle without hesitation, the coordinated headlights in the dark. I've driven through West Virginia since then. Different routes, different times of day, but I've never stopped at that gas station again, and I never will. A few years back, I was going through a rough time. Bad breakup. Job that was slowly killing my soul. I needed to get away from everything, so I decided to spend 2 weeks driving through the Blue Ridge and Smoky Mountains. Just me, my tent, a cooler full of food, and a worn-out trail map. It was mid-October. The summer crowds were long gone, and the nights were getting cold. Below freezing most nights. That's exactly what I wanted. Solitude. Quiet. I parked at this gravel turnout just west of Klingman's Dome and hiked into a remote section I'd been eyeing on the map. The trail was overgrown, barely visible in places. I had to push through branches, climb over fallen trees. I didn't see another person the entire hike. Not one. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, I found this clearing beside a creek. The trees formed a canopy overhead, and the water ran smooth over mossy rocks. It was perfect, isolated, peaceful. I set up my tent, soaked my feet in the creek, made some food. As the sun went down, the forest got darker than I expected. I've camped plenty of times, but this was different. The darkness was thick. My headlamp barely cut through it. I crawled into my tent around 9, but I couldn't fall asleep. There was this pressure in my chest, like something was sitting on me. My body kept telling me something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. Then I heard it. A cough. Human. Close. I froze. Listened. Nothing else. Just the sound of the creek and my own breathing. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent. The beam cut across the clearing, and that's when I saw her. A woman. Sitting at the edge of the creek, maybe 10 feet away. Her back was to me. She had long, tangled hair and was wearing this torn dress. She was just sitting there, completely still. I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" Nothing. She didn't move, didn't turn around. It was like she couldn't hear me. I stepped closer, keeping the flashlight on her. "Miss, do you need help?" Still nothing. My light was shining directly on her, and she didn't react at all. She just sat there, staring at the water, and then she was gone. Not like she stood up and walked away. She just vanished. 1 second she was there. The next second the beam of my flashlight was hitting empty ground. I searched the area, found footprints pressed into the damp earth near the creek. Bare feet. They led to where she'd been sitting, then just stopped. No tracks leading away. Nothing. I packed up my tent in under 10 minutes. I didn't care about being quiet or organized. I just wanted out. I hiked through the dark, barely able to see the trail, convinced the whole time that she was going to come charging out of the trees. When I got back to my car, the sun was just starting to rise. I sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I reported it to the park rangers, told them everything. They took notes, asked if I'd been drinking or taking any medication. I could tell they didn't. Believe me. One of them suggested it might have been a hallucination from exhaustion, but I know what I saw, and I know those footprints were real. I still camp, still hike, but I've never gone back to that clearing, and I don't think I ever will. About a year and a half ago, I finally worked up the courage to go through my grandfather's things. He'd passed away 3 years earlier, and nobody in the family wanted most of his stuff. So it ended up with me. Boxes of old clothes, tools, papers, and journals. Lots of journals. I couldn't bring myself to read them right away. It felt too personal, too painful. But eventually, I started going through them. Most of it was normal stuff. Notes about his garden, observations about the weather, thoughts about family. But then I found this one journal that was different. The handwriting was shakier. The entries were scattered, almost frantic. And they were all about Rich Mountain Fire Tower. My grandfather had worked as a fire lookout for a few seasons when he was younger. I knew that, but I didn't know about this. The entries talked about sleepless nights, about feeling watched. He wrote about hearing footsteps on the metal stairs in the middle of the night. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that would climb up, up, and then stop just before reaching the top. He wrote about being afraid to look under the bed. My grandfather. The man who'd fought in Korea, who'd never shown fear of anything in his life. I had to know what happened up there. I planned a trip to Rich Mountain, told myself it was just to see the tower, to understand what he'd experienced, but I think part of me was hoping to find answers. The hike was beautiful. Early spring, cool air, quiet woods. When I reached the tower, it was empty, unlocked. I climbed the stairs. Those same metal stairs my grandfather had written about, sand settled in. I brought his journals with me, spent the first night reading by headlamp, trying to piece together what had scared him so badly. The first night was calm. Too calm. Around 2 a.m., I heard a sharp metallic thud, like something hitting the stairs. I looked out the windows but didn't see anything. Probably just the wind. The second night, I heard it again. Louder this time. Closer, shust, but it was the third night when everything went wrong. I woke up to cold air on my face. The hatch, the one I'd latched from the inside, was open. Just a crack. Just enough to let in the night. I sat up, and that's when I saw it. Hanging from the ceiling of the fire lookout was a figure, completely black, no details, no features, just a silhouette of a person, suspended in midair. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass it out. I grabbed my flashlight, checked every corner of the small room. Nothing. But when I looked at the hatch, I realized something else. My boots, the ones I'd left just outside the hatch. They were gone. I searched everywhere. They weren't inside the tower. They weren't on the stairs. They were just gone. I left that morning barefoot, blistered and terrified. Hiked all the way back to my car without stopping once. I've tried to find other reports of strange activity at Rich Mountain. Searched forums, trail logs, ranger reports. Nothing. Not a single mention of anything unusual. But I know what I saw. And I know my grandfather saw something too. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. Early October. Me, Ashley, and Brooke decided to tackle a remote stretch of the Appalachian Trail in southwest Virginia. We weren't beginners. We'd been working our way through the trail for a couple years, section by section. The first day was perfect. Crisp air, leaves turning, hardly anyone else on the trail. We passed one other hiker, but he barely looked at us, just kept walking. As it started getting dark, we reached a trail shelter, but there were already 3 men there. They didn't say anything when we arrived. Just stared. All 3 of them. Something about it felt wrong. Ashley especially felt it. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "Let's keep going." So we did. We hiked another couple miles until we found a clearing way off the trail, set up our tent, cooked some food, and turned in early. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Not animal footsteps, human footsteps, moving around our campsite. Ashley and Brooke were already awake. Their eyes were wide in the dark. I reached for the pistol I always carry when I camp and slowly unzipped the tent. There were figures moving between the trees. At least 3, maybe more. They were ducking behind trunks, trying to stay out of sight, but I could see them. They were watching us. Then I saw lights down by the creek bed, about 50 yards away. 4 flashlights, 4 men standing perfectly still. One of them pulled something from his waist. Even from that distance, I could tell what it was. A machete. Ashley fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed through the valley. The lights went out. But we knew they were still there. We packed up everything in under 5 minutes and started moving. Not on the trail, straight through the brush, through the trees. No direction, just away. We hiked through the rest of the night. scratched up, bleeding, barely able to see where we were going. At one point, I looked back and saw someone standing far back in the trees. Just standing there, watching. We finally hit a road around noon the next day. Flagged down a truck. The driver took one look at us and knew something was wrong. A few weeks later, we heard that 2 solo hikers had gone missing in that same area. The police said the cases weren't connected, but we knew better. We never went back to that part of the trail. And I don't think we ever will. It was a little past 10:30 p.m., and I was driving home after my shift at a warehouse near an old strip mine. The road was one of those stretches that hardly sees any traffic, especially midweek. Just me in the dark. I'd made this drive 100 times. Black coffee and muscle memory were the only things keeping me alert. Then I saw him, a figure standing just off the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought it was a deer. But as I got closer, I realized it was a young man. Hoodie pulled up, hands in his pockets, face angled down. Against every better instinct, I pulled over, rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" He nodded. Climbed into the passenger seat without saying much. Gave me a name I can't remember now and asked if I could drop him somewhere south. His voice was flat, distant. He sat stiffly, holding a beat-up backpack close to his chest. As we drove, I started noticing things. His boots were caked with dried mud. Not hiking mud, something darker, and his jeans had stains near the knees and thighs. Dark stains that didn't look like dirt. Then we hit a roadblock. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing. An officer approached my window, asked for IDs. The hitchhiker tensed. When the officer asked his name, he gave a different one than he'd told me. The officer leaned in. "We found some bodies up the road. You 2 see anything unusual tonight?" Bodies. The word hung in the air. The hitchhiker's entire demeanor changed. He became rigid, almost predatory. His phone buzzed and he looked at the screen. Then he turned to me. "Let me out. Now. We're in the middle of..." "Now." I pulled over. He got out, grabbed his backpack and disappeared into the trees without looking back. I tried to report it to the police later, but they had no record of any bodies. No investigation. Nothing. It was like the roadblock never happened. The only proof I had was a patch of dirt he'd left on the passenger seat. I still don't know what happened that night, who he was, what he'd done, but I know one thing for certain. I'll never pick up another hitchhiker again. I've lived in Swords Creek my whole life. It's a small community in southwestern Virginia, the kind of place most people don't even know exists. My grandfather raised me here, and he taught me one rule above all others. Respect the mountains. Don't question what you don't understand. Just respect it. Last year, on the anniversary of my friend Reggie's death, me and James got together to remember him. We'd been a trio growing up, and losing Reggie left a hole that never really healed. We sat on my back patio, drinking, talking about old memories. It was a warm, early spring night, the kind that feels heavy with emotion. Around midnight, my 2 cats started meowing, but it wasn't their normal sound. It was desperate, almost panicked. They never came to the windows at night, never. After walking James home, I started back to my house. The walk was only 7 minutes, but something felt wrong. The forest went silent, completely silent. Then I heard it. My name, whispered from the trees. It sounded exactly like Reggie's voice. I stopped walking. My heart was pounding. Part of me wanted to step into the tree line to follow that voice, but something deep inside told me not to. This couldn't be Reggie. I'd been at his funeral. I'd seen his body. I ran the rest of the way home. Over the next few days, things got worse. My cats refused to go near the windows after dark. I felt like something was watching me, waiting. Then came the knock at the door. When I checked, nobody was there. I texted James to see if he'd stopped by. He said he was still at work, but the front door was wide open, and I know for a fact I'd locked it. I don't know what's out there in those woods, but I know it called my name, and I know it's still watching. I've been trail running for over a decade. It started as a way to clear my head in college and evolved into multi-day trips through some of the most remote parts of the country. Last spring, I planned a solo trip through the 100-mile wilderness in Maine, the most isolated section of the entire Appalachian Trail. 2 nights, 3 days. I packed light. GPS, food, water, bear canister, everything I needed. The first day was eerily quiet. No wildlife, no other hikers, just silence. On the second day, I started noticing boot prints. They weren't fresh, but they were recent, and they didn't follow any logical pattern. They zigzagged, circled back, wandered off trail. Then I found a candy wrapper, folded carefully, deliberately. The footprints continued. Whoever made them was walking forward, then back, then in circles, like they were lost, or like they were following me. Around noon, I heard footsteps behind me, up on a ridge, maybe 30 or 40 feet back. I called out. Nothing answered. That night, I found another candy wrapper on top of my pack. Someone had placed it there while I was setting up camp. Around 3 a.m., I heard movement outside my tent. Not animals. Deliberate pacing. Heavy breathing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, as I was heading back to my car, I saw him. A man among the trees. Scruffy beard, old clothes, standing perfectly still. He raised a gun. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I reached the ranger station. When I reported it, they suggested I'd encountered a transient hiker. Nothing more. But then the messages started. Other people who'd hiked that stretch and had similar experiences. A woman who found strange papers near her tent. Another who was followed for days by someone she never saw. Something's out there, and it's still hunting. I was born in Wyoming County, West Virginia. It's one of those forgotten corners of Appalachia. No hospitals, no Walmart, not even a traffic light. Just mountains and the people who live in them. I left when I was 23, thinking I'd escaped. But some places don't let you go that easily. Last January, my uncle died suddenly. I had to go back to sort through his belongings. He'd been a hoarder. Every inch of his house was filled with junk, rusted appliances, old newspapers. Like he couldn't stand the silence. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. The house sat at the base of a ridge, surrounded by thick woods. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It pressed into you, made you hear your own blood moving. One afternoon, I decided to hike up to an old logging road. About a mile up, I found a clearing where the ridge dropped off. From there, I could see the entire hollow. The house looked tiny, the road to town barely visible. That's when I saw the footprints. Recent enough to hold their shape in the soft dirt. They trailed off toward steep, overgrown terrain that nobody would choose to walk through. And then I saw it, deep among the trees, far enough that I could only make out a shape. Something was standing, shadowed between 2 tree trunks where the light didn't quite reach. It wasn't moving, not even swaying. But I knew, absolutely knew, it was looking at me. I didn't call out, didn't try to rationalize what I was seeing. I just ran. Later, I asked my older brother about it. He mentioned something our grandmother had once named, but he wouldn't tell me what it was. Years have passed, but I still dream about that trail, about that presence. My grandmother used to say, "You don't need ghosts when you have the mountains. They'll eat you just the same." I finally understand what she meant. I'm a nature lover from Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Early spring has always felt like the real new year to me, when everything starts growing again. Last spring, I planned a 3-day solo trip into a secluded area I'd visited before, completely off the grid. The first 2 days were peaceful. I found my spot, a clearing with a small pond surrounded by shade and silence. Perfect. On the 3rd day, while gathering firewood, I found something in the undergrowth. A skull, badly decayed, covered in moss. A few feet ahead, a bone, unmistakably human, a tibia. My stomach dropped. The night before, I'd been watching videos about local serial killers who'd operated in these mountains. The timing felt too strange. As night fell, the forest came alive. Around 11, I heard footsteps, movement in the bushes, then violent thrashing from the direction of the pond. Frantic, human-like sounds. I stepped out of my tent and saw something I'll never forget. A completely naked man, running wildly through the trees. It was so bizarre, so disturbing that for a second it almost felt comical, but the terror was real. My food bag, which I'd hung away from the campsite, was torn apart. Not by claws, by hands. I packed up and drove away as fast as I could. Called the police. They focused on the remains I'd found, but couldn't explain the rest. Months later, I found a post on Reddit from another camper named Derek. He'd been at the same pond on the same night. He'd been swimming when a bear destroyed his clothes. He'd run naked through the forest trying to get away. The naked man wasn't a killer. He was just another terrified camper. But I'll never forget that moment. The fear, the certainty that something was hunting me. Sometimes the most horrifying monsters are the ones we create in our own minds. It was a little past 3 a.m. I was driving home after a long night shift near an old strip mine in Man, West Virginia. The roads were empty, just me in the darkness. Then I saw him, a young man standing off the shoulder, hoodie up, hands in his pockets. I pulled over, offered him a ride. He climbed in without much conversation, gave me a name I can't remember, and asked to be dropped off somewhere south. As we drove, I started noticing details. His boots were caked with dark mud. His jeans had stains that didn't look like dirt. Then we hit a roadblock. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing. An officer asked for our IDs. When the officer asked the hitchhiker his name, he gave a different one than he'd told me. The officer's next words made my blood run cold. "We found some bodies up the road." The hitchhiker tensed. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then turned to me. "Let me out, now." I pulled over. He got out and disappeared into the darkness. I tried to report it later. The police had no record of any bodies. No investigation. Nothing. The only proof was a patch of dirt on my passenger seat. I don't know who he was or what he'd done. But I know I'll never forget the way he looked at me when he said, "Let me out." My husband and I have always been passionate hikers. Before our daughter Leah was born, we'd explored several stretches of the Appalachian Mountains. After her first birthday, we decided it was time to get back out there. We chose the Roan Highlands. Remote, beautiful, far from crowded trails. The first couple days were uneventful. We crossed paths with a few other hikers, but one couple stood out. A woman with curly red hair and a dirty straw hat. A tall, skinny man with a scruffy beard and nervous eyes. Their questions were oddly specific. How long we'd been out there, whether our daughter slept well in the tent, if we were afraid of wild animals. The woman reached out as if to hold Leah. I blocked her instinctively. Something felt wrong. On the 3rd night, we set up camp in a hidden clearing about 500 meters off the main trail. It seemed perfect. The next morning, we stepped out of the tent and saw footprints everywhere, multiple sets. They'd walked around our campsite during the night. But what terrified us most was what was missing. Leah's bottle, her plate, her utensils, all gone. The food was untouched, but her things were deliberately taken. That night, we took shifts watching. Around 2 a.m., my wife woke me up. Someone was standing in the vegetation just beyond our firelight. Then it happened. The woman from earlier was suddenly in our tent, pointing our own gun at us. The man was halfway inside. My husband threw ash from the fire into her face. The gun fell. We grabbed Leah and ran. We reported everything to the police. At first, the case was closed due to lack of evidence, but weeks later, we got a call. Another couple had reported a similar incident. Same trail, same descriptions. They were hunting families, targeting children. We never went back.